Hey, what's going on there, guys? Nick here from Absolute MTG, and welcome back to another installment of the MTG stock market, where we're tracking card prices across various formats within Magic the Gathering. This week, we are talking about Modern. Why? Well, the Pro Tour just happened, and it definitely drove up the price of select cards within the Amulet of Vigor combo deck and Splinter Twin. So, for this week, the weekly change cards that we are actually taking a look at are Azusa, Lost But Seeking, Pact of Negation, Wiltleaf Liege, Snapcaster Mage, and Splinter Twin. So sitting in our number one slot here, we have Azusa Lost But Seeking at $42.70 with a 38% increase of $11.79. This card probably shouldn't be $42. As somebody who bought Azusas at $20 and plays Amulet of Vigor, I'm actually pretty tempted to sell or trade my Azusas at $40 and just try to buy them back whenever the price actually goes down. As the format goes on and as people start adapting to sideboarding against the Amulet of Vigor deck with Blood Moons and other various things, the hype is going to go down, and so is the actual price. If you don't have your cards for Amulet of Vigor, now is probably not the time to just go try searching for Azusas and trying to pick them up. However, if you have some spare Azusas, or if you have Azusas and you don't really plan on playing the Amulet of Vigor deck for any foreseeable amount of time, now's probably the time to actually go and trade these away and then just wait a while and buy them back. Sitting in our number 2 slot here, we have our Pact of Negation at $23.15 with a 61% increase of $8.76, and it's pretty much riding on the same hype train as Azusa. Because people want to be playing this Amulet of Vigor combo deck, they want to fork over the money for Pact of Negation, and that is forcing the prices to actually go up. At the moment, if you have extra packs, pretty much like the same thing as Azusa, go and trade them away and then buy back your packs if you don't really need them. Other decks that play Pact within the Modern format are things like Ad Nauseam combo as well, and they like to play like 3 of those, whereas the Amulet of Vigor combo decks are playing 2 copies, and some are playing 1 or 2 in the sideboard on top of that. Sitting in our number 3 slot here, we have Wiltleaf Liege at $26.99 with a 36% increase of $7.16. Wiltleaf Liege has proven to be a really good card whenever you're playing the Junk versus Junk mirror match, and it actually gives you a huge amount of edge whenever you're actually playing against Liliana of the Veil and your opponent's just sticking it up and forcing both players to discard from their hand. Getting a free creature out of it's pretty sweet, whether it's your Luxodon Smiter or your Wiltleaf Liege, but the Liege actually gives you a huge edge whenever your creatures are just a little bit bigger than whatever your opponent's playing with, and they're bigger than their Siege Rhinos or their Tarmogoyfs. But outside of actually playing it in Junk, the Wiltleaf Liege is actually really good in the Green-White Hate Bears deck as well, which should also be rising in popularity very shortly here as well. Our next card here is Snapcaster Mage at $39.99 with a 13% increase of $4.55. Now, I'm not surprised that Snapcaster Mage is actually $40. He's always kind of lingered between 30 and 40. He's been as low as like 25, depending on where you look. But Snapcaster Mage is just a great blue card within the Modern format, and the Modern format actually likes playing blue spells a whole lot. Being able to recast your stuff is actually pretty good, I hear, and Snapcaster does a pretty good job at it. There's also the factor that Snapcaster Mage is not going to be reprinted in Modern Masters 2, given that they're only going as far as New Phyrexia with the sets that they are reprinting from. So Snapcaster Mage is safe. You can invest in buying more Snapcaster Mages, trading for more Snapcaster Mages, and trying to go and get some foil Snapcaster Mages. However, at $40, he's just about like $5 or $6 above where I would actually be trading for him. And to be honest, I wasn't even aware that he had risen $5 within the past week until I actually went and looked up the prices on MTGGoldfish. And our last card here for our top 5 discussion is Splinter Twin at $20.06 with a 14% increase of $2.39. Now, Splinter Twin's nothing really too big to actually note about or to even talk about how much the price has actually risen. The card's always been like $18, $17, and it's not really that big of a deal that it's up to $20 right now. The card's been at like $25, and that's been a reasonable price for people to actually go in and buy playsets of them. At $20, it's still actually pretty fair if you need your playset to go and drop $80 on a playset of them and be reasonably content with the purchase that you actually just made. Now, if anybody is willing to trade for Splinter Twins and trade theirs away for like 15 to 18, then that's definitely something to consider as far as local trading goes and trying to pick up some cards for pretty cheap. But it is worth noting that the card actually went up $2, and it's something to remember whenever you're trying to value trade at locals. So now it's time for some speculation and some theory crafting here. So where do I think the modern format's actually going to go from this point in time onwards? So Amulet is a established thing now. It's been a thing on the internet for quite some time, and people have been playing it on Magic the Gathering Online for months and months now, and it's put up really good results. I'm really surprised that it's taken this long for the deck to actually hit paper Magic and for people to actually go in and do well with this deck. It is a little bit high variance, it does have some really awkward draws, and you don't always get what you want when you actually want it. However, with proper piloting and knowing what to do in situations and what the proper line of play is, the deck is absolutely broken and busted. That being said, I think people are aware that it's actually a deck now, and they're going to be sideboarding and pre-sideboarding for it. With this, I mainly mean Blood Moon. Blood Moon is probably going to see more play. It's very easily playable within Splinter Twin, and it's even more playable within Blue Moon. So Blood Moon is definitely a card that I would try to look for if anybody has some spare Blood Moons that they're willing to trade away and you're trying to just turn some junk into some gold. Blood Moon is definitely a pretty good speculation card to actually go and try to acquire at this point in time, just because Splinter Twin is going to be very likely to just start jamming copies of it, and Blue Moon can definitely see another resurgence here, especially because Junk is starting to see more play again, and that deck is very, very greedy as far as its mana base is actually concerned. Now, as far as Junk is concerned, and cards that deck actually likes to play, Abrupt Decay is conveniently very good against Blood Moon, so it's not like I'm saying that Abrupt Decay is going to see more play, because it already sees a 4 of in most of those decks anyway. However, the price and demand for Abrupt Decay might go up a little bit as well. So it's pretty easy to get Abrupt Decays at the moment. Right now, they range between $10 and $15, usually somewhere at like the $12 range, and they're pretty easy to pick up. A lot of people still have Abrupt Decays because Return to Ravnica wasn't way too far back, and especially like a lot of casual players that just opened up Return to Ravnica here and there, they might have some Abrupt Decays that they don't really need, and it should be pretty easy to trade a fetch land or something like one of the cheap ones like Wooded Foothills or Windswept Heath for an Abrupt Decay, and then you can easily turn those Abrupt Decays into some bigger stuff with the difference in value. Now, as far as Blue Moon is concerned, and that deck actually seeing more play, something that I would look into is actually Vidalcan Shackles and Spellskite at the moment. Spellskite is just so good always, and if I could play more than 4 copies in some decks, I absolutely would. Spellskite is just so good against the meta for a lot of different narrow implications, and a lot of times you can just play Spellskite in most every deck. Now, I say that very loosely, but honestly, Spellskite is just such a good card. It has a pretty high price tag at the moment. However, Spellskite is another card that isn't horrible to have in your trade binder, because chances are people are actually going to want them, and it's not unreasonable to actually see a price go up in Spellskites, especially as different decks start to emerge. People start experimenting with things. Splinter Twin starts to see more play, and with that, people are trying to jam other decks like Boggles. So if you're going to like a Grand Prix trial or something like that, I would expect to see some of those fringe decks like Boggles popping up, and honestly, one of the most annoying cards to actually run into if you're a Boggles player is Spellskite, just because you're really going to get nowhere with your actual enchantments that you're trying to put on your creature. Now, as far as Standard is concerned and what I would do with Standard, the first talking point I would have here for the Standard format and sets would be, if your shop allows you to pick what you want to do as far as prizing out is concerned, whether it's Fate Reforged, Khans of Tarkir, M15, or whatever, if your shop allows you to choose between like Fate Reforged or Khans of Tarkir in this instance, I would be going for Khans of Tarkir. We've hit that point where Fate Reforged really isn't that desirable at the moment. There aren't really that many things within the set that you really just want to be opening, and the amount of value that you're actually getting out of opening packs isn't as great as it would be with Khans of Tarkir. Same thing with Khans of Tarkir. I think that all of the fetch lands are low enough at this point that it's very easy to start trading for them, and you can get them at a pretty reasonable price, even if you're just buying them. If you don't have your fetch lands at this point, now's a pretty good time to even just go to shops and just start buying some cards from your local card shop. But equally as much, I would say that the fetch lands are a pretty reasonable price right now that you can actually just confidently trade for them. And even if you don't plan on playing them, it's not a bad thing to just kind of sit on them for a year or two, because the price of them, the price is going to go up. The price is going to go up over time, and they are definitely going to be at a much higher price than they are at the moment right now. But as far as Fate Reforged is concerned, and cards that I would be getting rid of, I would probably not hold on to cards like Brutal Horde Chief, Shaman of the Great Hunt, Soulfire Grandmaster. Those cards really aren't as impressive. Even like Warden of the First Tree, none of those cards have really impacted the standard format that heavily. Obviously, Monastery Mentor is one of the better mythics within this set. The card's just really good. Personally, I don't like Soulfire Grandmaster that much. I don't really think it's that amazing in the standard format or other Eternal formats likewise. However, that's just my opinion. I just don't really think the card's that impressive. On the other hand, however, I actually do think that Whisperwood Elemental is actually very good right now. So if you have like Brutal Horde Chiefs or like Soulfire Grandmasters, that's probably what I would be trying to trade for Whisperwood Elementals. Like, if anybody is willing to offer you like 2 Whisperwood Elementals for a Soulfire Grandmaster at this point, I think that's just a really good trade. The Elemental is really the only card that's stood out to me within the set outside of like the obvious like Monastery Mentor and Ugin that's really good in control. The Elemental seems like it's actually a really good card in Mono Green Devotion, alongside like Nykthos, and I actually want to say that See the Unwritten is actually not that bad and actually could be playable as well. However, it's just a speculation. The card seems like it could definitely be a very good card, or it could just be one of those cards that's like, it's okay, it's just not really very competitive. It might be a competitive card. It's like an FNM grade type card. However, I do think Whisperwood Elemental does have a lot of potential for being a good card, and that's something that I would definitely try to gravitate towards already getting my playset at this point in time, and at least trading for them if other people don't think the card's very good and you can get it for a cheaper price. Another card that comes to mind when looking at Fate Reforged, and something that you can get pretty easily and people can just kind of throw in trades to match values, is actually Temporal Trespass. Now, me personally, I have 5 playsets of Temporal Trespass. I'm speccing on this card because I think it actually does have the potential of being a alright to decent, or maybe even better than decent card in Eternal formats. It's hard to say that this card will or will not see play. I think the best way that I've discussed it with other people has been, there's like a 75% chance that this card like could be very broken in Eternal formats. However, it's something that is just really, really dirt cheap at this point in time at like $2.30 at an average. And you're able to get the Temporal Trespasses for very cheap. So if there's any unmatched values in trades, and whoever you're trading with has like some Temporal Trespasses, and you're like, all right, well, if you throw in a Trespass, then we can call it even. I think it's a pretty reasonable card to just be picking up at $2. You're not really losing a whole lot. If the card doesn't go anywhere, you only really invested $2 in it. But otherwise, I think the card definitely has the potential of being somewhere like around $10. I don't really think the card would ever be much more than that. I think realistically, it's probably like a $5 to $8 card at an average at some point in time within like the next year or 2 years or something like that. But I definitely think at $2, it's a pretty easy pickup, and most people really don't care about the card at the moment. And the last card to highlight here as we wrap up the second installment of the MTG stock market is Sliver Hive Lord. So you guys probably forgot about Sliver Hive Lord. Everybody is up in the hype about Fate Reforged and Khans of Tarkir and all the cool cards that are out of these sets, but a lot of people forgot about the Sliver Hive Lord. He's currently at about like $7 and he's actually pretty easy to pick up. However, he's not one of those cards that just show up in trade binders all the time, but it's something that you probably should be asking for. EDH player bases and casual player demand is always a price determinant, especially for legendary creatures and cool tribal stuff like Slivers, and Sliver Hive Lord is definitely right up that alley for both of those different aspects of the game, and is something that is just so reasonably cheap at the moment to just try to go out of your way to pick up. He's a 5/5 for 5, he's rainbow colored, he's a legendary creature, he has that whole tribal aspect and coolness to him with slivers, and he gives your sliver creatures indestructible, which is actually really sweet for EDH. But that about does it for this installment of the MTG stock market, so thank you guys for joining me here for our discussion. And if you guys have any talking points or anything that you would like for me to discuss in future episodes, please leave it down in the comments below and give me some feedback. But until next time guys, thank you for joining me and peace out.